Next we have ethereal essence. When I think about the things that you're associating with that person, and that's why you're labeling them as ethereal, those things have very different levels of like seductiveness versus completely sexless. If you're seeing someone and they have that S curve that makes them kind of feel like an angel, their version of ethereal essence would be way more like timeless, ancient, immortal kind of. And when we think of angels, we don't really even think about promiscuity. So when you're talking about the level of modesty, it's not even on that spectrum really. It's not overly stealthy, it's not overly promiscuous, but the way that those outfits would be more covered, I guess, would be different than someone who is like royal and giving off classic essence. So less stuffy and more just think Galadriel, for example. She's not overly sexy or promiscuous, but she isn't necessarily stuffy. She's just above it, basically. She's above sex appeal, if that makes sense. Above such things. One association that you use to basically title someone as having ethereal essence would be them looking like an alien. To do again about their facial features. So the alien, I feel like that's difficult, but I would actually look to see what their secondary essence is, like Tilda Swinton, a very like dramatic style essence as well as the ethereal essence. In my marriage of those two, decide her secondary style essence would affect the level of modesty that her alien etherealness also brings in. Like woodland goddess, mythological creature, and mermaid in the same category. But while they tend to be represented with like less clothing, they are usually revealing in a very like artistic way that's not overly promiscuous. You could probably go with maybe more promiscuous looks and they wouldn't necessarily look overly promiscuous on you. I would also take cues from your secondary style essence as well. What's interesting to me about the level of modesty you would associate with a fairy is there's a few things. So fairies tend to be mischievous, but they also tend to be usually drawn as children. Maybe it would be similar to ingenue, somewhere in the middle there, where they're not overly stuffy, they're not overly promiscuous. I don't think they would be as sexless as those like other immortal readings. I would say they could probably pull off looks that have some type of like flirtatious element to it when it comes to certain cuts and stuff that are flattering. I would make it more of a like small piece of the overall look as opposed to like the main focus point of an outfit. The materials you associate with ethereal essence are sheer materials, sheens, just anything that feels like fading away kind of. So think of materials that are just more like airy feeling, wispy feeling, I guess you could say. Satin, tulle, fine textures, like how they would combine separate pieces would be in a way that isn't necessarily lots of color blocking but feels very harmonious within the look, so that you aren't drawn to a specific piece and it just feels very harmonious with that person and is a bit more low contrast. So going into what that means, the colors that that person would gravitate towards would have a lot to do with their natural coloring. Shades and undertones that occur within you naturally. If you have like a very rich skin tone, you would go towards more those like rich colors. If you have a very like light, low contrast look, like similar to me, you would go towards more of your light versions and your neutrals and your, again, pastels of your color palette. The colors that are typically associated with ethereal essence would be your lights and neutrals in your palette. It's coming from the associations with otherworldly things, the ocean, forests. You would borrow colors from those types of associations. The forest, the sky, the ocean, space, greens, blues, purples, metals, sparkles. You could even take a picture that appeals to you from one of those things that I said and try to basically build an outfit off of looking at that picture. So I would just, with the ethereal style essence, stay away from overly color blocking, and you don't necessarily want to have outfits that have one statement piece, but more so just an overall like flow for the eye. That might be difficult for a lot of people if you're trying to like dress completely true to the style. That's why I would encourage you to, if you're trying to create some kind of aesthetic, take into consideration multiple elements of different fashion theories. So for the hair that would be associated with ethereal essence style, I would also take cues from the secondary essence that occurs in that person naturally. If you're thinking alien-like, it could be very bold. What is done with their hair to create that ethereal look could be extremely bold. Tilda Swinton is sometimes pictured and completely bald, or with very, very sleeked hair, wild hair. Anything you would really see in a fairy tale, even having like little braids, it's unlikely that the hair is going to be overly kept. Somewhat feminine depending on why they're associated with ethereal essence. Honestly, look straight to the things that we associate with ethereal essence. The patterns that are typically associated with ethereal essence are anything that is reminiscent of those things that we were referring to, outer space, like little stars, little sparkles, forests, root-like patterns, wing-like patterns, watercolor patterns, and feel very like faded. Things that just have like a mirage-y look to them. even patterns that just evoke another time period that you're not quite sure where that pattern comes from. If you're going for a statement look, use a pattern that is not trendy, but just very taking from 18th century like period drama or before modern fashion history, something that looks like it would be in another time or another world. So that's it. The next video, I am going to try to practically apply these elements of both of these styles to outfits to make them wearable. You can find plenty of examples of looks that have ingenue or ethereal essence, but the reality is they're not very wearable for everyday life. And so I'm going to challenge myself to try to create a statement look, a everyday casual look, and even a ultra casual look, taking into consideration these things and also trying to make it seem fairly current